Yeah, no kidding. Okay.
Okay.
That's a good one. Just
I am going to say something. Or the wastewater. Call to order this Tuesday, June 26th informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council, and welcome. Good afternoon to everyone who's here at Carnegie Town Hall and those of us watching on CityLink and on SiouxFalls.org. We're glad that you're sitting in with us. Just a reminder this afternoon that the informational agenda, as well as if we had a 7 o'clock meeting tonight, those agendas are posted on SiouxFalls.org on the Friday preceding this meeting, and this agenda was posted on Friday. Despite media reports today, we will follow this agenda, and the first item on the agenda during presentations will be the pension design study. I would love to be able to give you one of those buzzers like when you go into Olive Garden and you're waiting for your table so that you would know when your item comes, but it will be a lengthy conversation, and I would invite you to keep track online or on CityLink if you don't wish to remain in the chambers during that conversation. That being said, we'll begin with our staff reports. Lori Hogstead, City Clerk.
Council Chair Erpenbach, City Council members, I have a very short report today. I just wanted to let you know that we had Alpha Video in the building on Friday, and they did the finish up work in this room. One of the items that they did bring in was a timer, which is up on the desk near Tamara. And that timer can be run through our Creston panel very easily. And if we choose to use that during public input or whatever portion of the meeting we choose to use it at, we certainly can. It will be easy for us to operate and to view from our spot up there at the Chambers desk.
Great. Any questions for Lori? I have one question. What's a Creston panel?
The Creston panel is this panel right here, and there's a similar one right there that we can operate the different equipment from.
Command Central, then.
Command Central,
Great.
that's it.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
All right. Next staff report from Jim David, Legislative and Operations Manager. Jim.
Good afternoon, City Council. At the previous council meeting, it was discussed an agenda item that designated an official newspaper. Since that time, I found some information that pertained to that particular subject, dealing with the libraries. The Sioux Falls libraries within the city limits of Sioux Falls actually spend about $871 per month for 7 subscriptions. That ends up being about $10 per month per subscription. And that includes the Argus Online that is accessible to those that are going to the libraries. There was discussion also on rates. That's actually set by administrative rule. As reported last week, the total has been about $61,000 per year on the legal publications. There is actually an administrative hearing that's going to be on July 3rd that's going to look at the possibility of increasing that by 3%. That's going to be probably about close to $2,000 increase in city costs. And also there was a discussion about opportunities with other newspaper publications. In order for a newspaper to be designated as the official newspaper, it has to have a paid circulation. So if there's any other questions that any of you have regarding that agenda item.
Questions for Jim? Councilor Entenmann.
Jim, is the municipal league looking at that, or are they entering, is this part of that hearing that,
Exactly.
that you're talking about?
Yep, I've been in discussions with Yvonne, and she's actually going to be attending that. She did submit a letter objecting to that rule change. If, for example, it is approved at the administrative rule hearing, there is a subsequent meeting of a legislative committee that's going to decide that, and if that ends up approving, then it's final. But there's additional step even after this July 3rd hearing. So,
and the rates are set by the state.
They are set by the state. It is a maximum fee, so there is that opportunity. Councilor Staggers had discussed renegotiating. That is a possibility. There is that maximum fee, so there is that opportunity out there.
Other questions for Mr. David? Councilor Karski.
Just so I understand, the requirement is set by the state legislative action. Is that right?
There's a state statute, but the fee is actually an administrative rule.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. David? One from the chair. This hearing is a state hearing, obviously. I assume it's in Pierre. Is that something that someone from our office or someone from council should attend, or do you think Municipal League will cover it?
I think I can have a discussion with Yvonne, but I believe that maybe the second hearing, if it is approved, that maybe somebody from council or staff could be in attendance at that meeting. But I think I would wait to the second hearing if it is approved initially. So.
Okay. And then one other question from the chair. Are we at the maximum with our agreement with our legal newspaper?
I believe we are at the maximum. The person that's in charge of that at the Argus was not available to discuss that.
Okay,
so.
good. Thank you. You'll follow up for us. Any other questions for Mr. David? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your report. City Council open discussion this afternoon.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilor Aguilar.
We have been finding that our informational meetings are very popular and are taking up, as last week, we went with only 5 minutes between our meetings and the start of our 7 o'clock City Council meeting. And we have also come into agreement with the county that we would, on that third Tuesday of the month, start our meetings at 5 o'clock. So I would like to make a suggestion, which I have passed before the mayor and our chair, to change the event center updates to the third Tuesday of the month. That way it would be the only item on the agenda, and we would have the time then to go from our informational into the Minnehaha County meeting.
Thoughts?
So I'm looking for feedback.
Yeah. Questions or comments for Councilor Aguilar? Councilor Rolfing?
I know at one time we were talking about moving the land use to that Tuesday also. Is that still on the horizon instead of the last? Because there would be, or the third, no, we were looking at the, I think we were looking at the third, weren't we?
We were looking at the third if we could move all of the county to the fourth, but that didn't happen.
Right, the county stuff is all going to be on the third.
Right.
Eventually on the third Tuesday.
But we have had a request by the administration in the past, and I'm guessing at this point too that on that second Tuesday of the month, when they give their update, that be the only presentation. And it is difficult when we have to reconvene after the Minnehaha County meeting. I think that also it would benefit the mayor in that he would be here for the Minnehaha. He wouldn't have to be here 2 weeks in a row. He would only have to be here that third for the informational. Of course, he's here for the city council meetings. But I just thought that it might be helpful to all those.
Comments or questions? Concerns? Otherwise, we'll kind of run with it. direct staff to go ahead and make those changes. I know there are some things that are scheduled now on that third Tuesday, so we'll need to switch those with the second Tuesday, and we'll have staff make sure that that gets worked around. I'm getting nods from clerks. Thank you. Councilor Jameson.
I just wanted to give a real quick update on the Metro Management Council. We met last Wednesday, and there's a lot of stuff that we cover, and there's a lot of great things happening there, but just something I thought you might find interesting is that as the weather gets warmer, the amount of calls that are received by 911 dramatically increase. The weather has a lot to do with the amount of calls that they receive, and they're doing their best to handle all those calls, but it's just an interesting note, something that they're working through, and they have for years and years. Every time the weather gets warmer, the calls for services go up. Same with a lot of storms when they happen, but I didn't realize it till I was on the council that that was occurring, but I just thought I'd share that with the group.
Interesting. Questions for Councilor Jameson? Thank you for that report. Councilor Staggers.
Yes, I just wanted to briefly clarify an email that all of the council members received yesterday. I was talking to a constituent about the bicycle ordinance, and so I thought I'd just clarify what was mentioned, and also at the same time maybe present some different ideas about how we can look at the ordinance itself. The first thing, we have rules of the road, which cover, of course, any vehicle on the road or street. And these are state laws, and they're also city ordinances, too. And then we have this bicycle ordinance that we're dealing with right now. And one of the most intriguing things about the bicycle ordinance is that a lot of staff has said, hey, this is a good educational vehicle to let the people of Sioux Falls know about how bicycles should operate. And the more I thought about it, the more I really do agree. It's a good educational vehicle. However, the way the ordinance is right now, there's no penalties involved. Since there's no penalties, then we go to the ordinance that deals with when we have ordinances that do not have penalties, and I think that's $200 for an infraction and or 30 days in jail. Now, I think all of us would agree that's a little outlandish if you violate this bicycle ordinance, but that's the maximum possible. And so I mentioned to this constituent, you know, if we really want to make this an educational ordinance, maybe what we could do is just simply issue warning tickets when people violate it. So it would truly provide an education for them. But then, of course, if you have a situation where we have somebody driving recklessly in a vehicle or a bicycle or whatever, of course, it wouldn't be covered by the bicycle ordinance. It would be covered by other ordinances and state laws that we already have. So that's something that I suggested to that constituent, and I just throw that out for you. And in the future, maybe we can talk some more about it.
Good. Thank you, Councilor Staggers. Questions for Councilor Staggers? Remind us where that's at in terms of committee.
It is coming up for the second reading.
Coming up for second reading in another week or so.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so opportunities for conversation then. Any other open discussion for council? All right, let's rock and roll. We're headed into the pension design study conversation presentation by Bill O'Toole, Director of Human Resources, after many long delays. Thank you.
Thank you, City Council. Bill O'Toole, Human Resources Office. Today, Tracy Turbeck and I are going to tag team this presentation. Tracy's going to kick things off, but just a quick overview on what we'd like to cover for you today. Tracy's going to give you a little bit of the background about why we pursued this project, what's the purpose for making these changes. He's going to review with you the contribution rates and the causes behind those rising contribution rates. He's also going to review some investment return information for you. I'll then come up and talk a little bit about the history of where we've been real quickly, and then we'll take a look at the two prevailing choices that are under consideration for future employees. I also want to touch real briefly on what local control means in the context of pension administration, and also review the recommendations of the pension board regarding current employees, which would require a vote of the membership as we go down that road, and then wrap things up by talking about the next steps and answering any questions that you might have regarding this city project. It is one of the top 10 city projects that have been pursued for the last couple of years. And I would like to mention and let the council know that we do have some trustee board members here if for any reason you would like to ask any questions of some of those folks as well. But with that, I'll turn it over to Tracy Turback to kick off the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, Council. As Bill mentioned, I'm kind of here as a table setter to review the lay of the land on this particular issue and try to answer the question about why make pension changes. And of course, it should come as no surprise to anybody that the answer to that is that it's all about cost to the city and cost to the city taxpayers to maintain our pension plan. City contribution rates are at their highest level that they have been in 26 years. In fact, the dollars contributed by the city to the pension plans have more than doubled in the past 7 years. This 2012 contribution rates for general employees this year are 18.39%. In 2005, the city's contribution rate for general employees was just under 12%. For police employees, the 2012 contribution rate is just under 30%. In 2005, that rate was about 18.5%. And for fire employees, the current contribution rate this year is just under 35%. And in 2005, 7 years ago, that rate was about 15.5%. So, as I mentioned, the city dollar contribution has more than doubled. We expect to contribute this year from city funds about $15.9 million, and in 2005, that contribution from the city was $7.2 million. So the increase in city contributions clearly is not sustainable. That's the bottom line of why we're here, and that's why the retirement board was challenged to identify ways to reduce and stabilize those city contribution rates. This is a graphic that gives a 10-year history of the city contribution rates for the three employee groups. The rates, of course, are expressed as a percentage of pay. In other words, that's the rate of the total payroll for each one of those employee groups that are covered by the plans. The graphic here runs from 2003 through 2012. If you look at the very bottom line, the one that remains on the bottom, that's the general employee contribution rate. Back in 2003, it was about 9.75%. And in 2012, as I mentioned a minute ago, was up over 18%. In 2003, the fire contribution rate was just under 11%. And for 2012, it's almost 35%. The police rate in 2003 was about almost 17.5%, and that rate has grown to just under 30%. So you can see I think this graphic pretty clearly demonstrates that something needs to change, and the path that we're on with the city's contribution rates is not sustainable. So what's driving the increase in the city's contributions? I'm going to touch on two of the primary factors. The first, in recent years, the city pension plans have experienced volatile investment markets, and all pension plans across the country have experienced that same thing. This volatility creates a large degree of uncertainty with where we're going in terms of the cost and pension rates and variability within the city's contribution rates from year to year. And I think the next slide I show you will kind of illustrate how that, just what that volatility has been in recent years. In the city's pension plan, the city does bear most of the investment risk, and when our 7.75% assumed rate of return is not earned, the city contribution must increase to make up for that difference. In any pension plan, there are many, many assumptions that an actuary makes, and that's just kind of inherent in the business. We're talking about future events, future things, future investment earnings. So actuaries make many assumptions about what's going to happen in the future. They make assumptions that are both economic and non-economic. They make assumptions about at what age employees will retire, how wages will increase over time, wage inflation in the future. They make assumptions about how long we'll live, when we'll die. And one of the key assumptions that they make is the return that the city will, or the pension plan will earn on its return, or on its plan assets. And that's a key drive, right? The city's contribution rate increases in recent years have not necessarily been driven by changes in those assumptions, but the investment rate of return is a key assumption and has received a great deal of attention as this topic has been discussed. And so I wanted to bring that up. It is relevant to your discussion on and the decisions that you have to make, in that the city does bear that investment risk. And just by way of an example or illustration, on the slide you can see that if the actuary were to change the assumption from a 7.75% return on plan assets going forward into the future to a 7% increase, you can see that it would be a significant or cause a significant increase in the dollar amount that the city would have to contribute to the plan. The other major driver that's causing city contributions to increase is the cost of providing insurance, health insurance for retirees after they leave city employment. And that's one of the major drivers that we're experiencing as well. A little bit more about the investment returns. This chart illustrates the annual returns on pension fund assets from 2002 through 2011. So it's a 10-year chart that shows, starting, it's a little bit backwards maybe from what you would normally see. The oldest years on the right, so if you want to read it kind of in a chronological sequence, 2002 is on the far right, and our most recent year, 2011, is on the left. The horizontal kind of gold-colored bar is the 7.75% assumed rate of return on plan assets. So the results individually each year over the last 10 years kind of can be summarized that in 3 of those years, the plan return, or the return on assets, fell short. In 2002, 2008, and again in 2011. The return did not hit that 7.75% assumed rate. In the other 7 years, it exceeded the assumed rate of 7.75%. As to the volatility, the range of annual returns during that 10-year period of time ranged from a high positive return of over 27% in 2003 to a low of a negative return in 2008 of more than 27%. So that's quite a wide range and really illustrates the volatility that our pension plan, and I'm sure if you looked at the state's plan and many other pension plans around the country, you would see a similar level of volatility that really reflects the investment markets that we've seen over the last 10 years. With that said, I do firmly believe that the pension boards have done an excellent job of overseeing the investment of the plan assets, and I think the next slide will help to illustrate that. This is the last slide on investment returns, and the top portion, or the top box, gives a 1, 3, 5, and 10-year perspective on the investment returns for the plan. During a 1 year, for example, the annualized return for last year, 2.5%, maybe not enough to get many of us real excited at 2.5%, certainly well short of the assumed 7.75% return. But in fact, that percentile is a ranking, or comparative ranking, of a universe of other pension funds, and indicates that the City of Sioux Falls pension plan ranked at the 29th percentile, which means we did better than 71% of the other plans out there. And the same is true with the other 3 benchmarks there. The 3-year annualized return, 13.7%. We beat 93% of the other plans out there. Over the past 5 years, the return is, on an annualized basis, has been 3%, and again ranked at the 31st percentile, or beating 69% percent of the other funds out there. And over the 10-year time frame, a 6.9% annualized return and beating 92% of the other plans out there. So I think that really speaks very highly of the quality and the performance of the investment returns that the City of Sioux Falls plan has experienced. The bottom box there is really looking at the similar information over the last 15 years in 5-year chunks. So you can see over the past 5 years from the end of 2006 through the end of 2011, we see that same 3% return that we see up above. And then going backwards in 5-year chunks, you can see what the annualized returns have been during those time frames. I think this slide demonstrates a couple of things. One, again, the volatility in the investment markets that we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years. And it also illustrates that the Sioux Falls pension funds have performed very well in comparison with other plans. I think it's a very impressive record, and it's something that certainly the pension boards and those involved in overseeing that program can certainly take a lot of pride and pleasure in seeing the returns and how we performed relative to peers. So how does the discussion or this information on investment returns really fit in to your discussion and decision that you have before you regarding current and future city employees? And I would tie the two together in this way. I guess currently, as I've mentioned a couple of times, under the current plan, the city bears the investment risk. If investments returns fall short of the assumed rate, the city's contribution rate is impacted. And if the new tier option is selected for future employees, that risk would continue to be managed the same way and would continue to be borne by the city. The other option that you're considering for future employees is to move future employees to the South Dakota retirement system. And if that is the path that you choose, the investment risk would slowly and very slowly begin to shift more toward a shared risk with the employees that are covered by that plan. So with that, that concludes my portion of the presentation, and Bill will now review the items that he mentioned and on what's been done and kind of the layout, the meat of the presentation really for the decisions that you folks have to make.
Again, real quickly, I think you're familiar with some of the history that has gone on, but I would like to just recap. The Pension Board issued an RFP for professional services to assist them with their review. They did that in April of 2011. They hired the actuarial consulting firm of Kavanaugh McDonald in June, and they finished their work in February. They issued a final report and presented that to the board on February 8th. The Pension Board, in turn, presented their recommendations to the mayor and city council on March 2nd. And what they did is they laid out 3 different groups of employees, if you will, and their recommendations. They had recommendations affecting future employees of the city, current employees, and then what they decided to take no action with respect to any existing retirees. And then on March 26th, Kavanaugh McDonald representatives came and provided an executive order review to the council. Council referred the project to the fiscal committee for review, and then there'll be resolutions up for consideration in front of the full council on July 10th. As it relates to the choices that the council is going to consider for future employees, 2 options have been laid out, and there are 2 prevailing options for your consideration, and that is the South Dakota retirement system or developing a new tier structure within the existing pension plans for those future employees. And I just want to emphasize, as we're moving through this, try to keep those different employee groups in mind and what's happening. This is dealing with future hires moving forward. And the first option, again, we've shared additional information as it relates to the various options. We wanted to keep the discussion about the 2 options at a fairly high level in terms of the policy considerations between the 2 options. And for South Dakota retirement system, that option would get the city out of the pension administration business. It would serve to reduce and stabilize the city's contribution rates. Those are fixed and shared contribution rates. 6% employee contribution rate in general, 6% employer contribution rate in general, and 8% in public safety for both. And then again, future plan modifications as it relates to the South Dakota retirement system are determined by the South Dakota legislature. The other option, and this is the option that the board recommended, is creating a new tier structure within the existing defined benefit pension plan. And in this option, the city would obviously retain the pension plan administration and the liability associated with it. That option as well would reduce city contribution rates, and they would be accomplished through reducing benefit levels and increasing contribution rates of employees. And here what's an important distinguishing factor is that with this option, once that new tier structure would be in place, any future plan modifications would have to be approved by active employee membership. And if that were to then occur, then the mayor and council could consider action under that option. And I know there was some discussion at one of the last meetings with respect to local control and pension administration. I thought I'd just highlight this. I'm not going to read each of these bullets, but it's fair to, it's important to understand that the South Dakota codified law and the city's retirement ordinances really govern the operation and administration of the pension plans, and it designates that the pension is administered and operated by the pension boards. And again, that third bullet point is very key, is that there can be no change to employee contribution levels without an affirmative vote of the membership and the city council. So there are legislative parameters in place that define controlling interests that I want to make sure everybody was aware of. And again, now we're going to shift and talk a little bit about the pension board recommendations as it relates to current employees. The board recommended for current employees that increase contributions by 2%, by incrementally doing that by 1% in 2014 and 1% in 2015. And the second major recommendation that they made was consideration be given to eliminate access to the city's existing health plan for those retiring after 12/31/13, and in its place provide a $40 per month stipend, a $40 per month per year of service stipend until Medicare age eligible, inflationary adjustment at 3%, and the stipend would only go to the retiree with no survivorship to the spouse. And again, when we're talking about current employees, this would require a vote of the membership before we would ever get to any legislative action in front of this body. And the next steps, obviously, the resolutions for council consideration will be on the July 10th city council meeting to address both the recommendations for current and future employees. And once we get beyond that, that will provide some direction, if you will, to the administration to pursue those options. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, as would Tracy and or any of the pension board members. Thank you.
Sorry, Councilor Kresge. Councilor Aguilar.
Bill, when you're talking about policy decision for city council, option 1, you say that it gets the city out of the pension administration business, but it doesn't get them out of it right away, right? I mean, would we still, with those that are currently under the pension system we have, there would still be a pension board that would oversee it. So it would be, I've heard estimates, 30-plus years before we would be out of the pension business.
That is correct. Anybody that's currently retired, we would have to have the run out tied to those folks. So that would still be in place for quite some time.
Okay. Councilor Entman.
I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. When you talk about local control, it is the pension board, or not the pension board, excuse me, but the members of the unions, the respective unions, that would vote on whether or not we change their pension benefits. Is that not correct? Before we can change the pension benefits, they have to go along or approve that by their action, by their votes.
A couple of things as it relates to that. If you're talking about current employees today, yes, any change, they would have to vote on it before this body would consider it. As it relates to the future, That is a policy decision for the city council. However, if you were to go that new tier structure route, while that may be a policy decision for this council, if at any point in the future you're confronted with the need for future adjustments, you would then have to go through that membership vote. So hopefully that's clear as well. But yes, and it's not just the unions, it's all members of the pension system.
Okay, great. And so what we've done here then, if my mind serves me correctly, is that we've said we owe the people that have retired, we owe them, they retired under the benefit program that at the time that they retired, we owe them as a city. We owe it to them. The existing pension board that we have came out with recommendations, very good recommendations I might add, for existing employees. And now we need to decide what's going to happen with the future employees. And if we decide to go along with the pension board's recommendation, where the future employees then go underneath the new deal that we approve, we actually lose control as a city council, because at that point in time, if we do need to make changes in the future, we cannot make those changes until the membership or until the employees vote on it and approve of it, or approve the changes first, before we can then affect change. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we actually lose control as the elected members of the city. We lose control in that facet of the program.
Well, and arguably you don't have it now as it relates to current members. They've got to affirmatively vote first before any action could be taken. So if we did a membership vote and current members voted down any recommended proposal, it's done at that point. But the decision itself as it relates to future hires is a policy decision.
Okay, that got it for you? Councilor Karski.
Yeah. I guess to begin with, we're on the hook for a lot longer than 30 years under our current plan. That 20-year-old that we hired last week, whoever that person may be, they worked for the city for 30 years or 35 years, and then they retired for 30 years. We could be paying off the current plan for another 60 years, 70 years, quite frankly. What I did was, from our fiscal committee meeting, we came up with the idea of bringing these two recommendations to the full council for consideration. And I have to agree with what Councilor Enneman said. The option provided by the pension boards is a very good one and very appealing to us. I hope that it's as appealing to their general membership, and I would like to keep that option as one of our options. But I've also have presented for you a third option. And the third option has to deal with the new employee hires. Currently, like I said, the option for the current employees, that's our commitment, that's our obligation. We made that promise to those people, and we need to keep it. We need a little help. When we're starting to look at 30%, 35% contribution into our pension plan, on Saturday's Wall Street Journal, they had an article about corporate pension plans. They're funded to 4 or 5% annualized returns. We're looking at 7 3/4%. That's kind of an unrealistic benchmark in today's market. It's very difficult to make. It can be made, but if you go 4 years and you make 10% a year and then you lose 25% the next year, you've wiped out those prior 4 years at 10%. A lot of volatility there, a lot of risk for the city. So going forward with our future employees, we have two options basically as I presented them to you in the resolutions. One is the option of putting them into the South Dakota retirement system like we had discussed. And the second option is to put them into the current pension plan with modifications, and those modifications are to...
Excuse me, Councilor Karski. Mm-hmm. There are handouts at our seats. Is that what you're referring to?
That's correct, yeah. There's three different resolutions that are put in front of you.
Thank you.
Up from the two, right now basically we have two options. The retirement system of South Dakota or the modifications as recommended by the Pension Review Board. If we go with, and it's one or the other, we don't have the option of choosing both, okay? If we choose the one that's recommended by the Pension Review Board and their membership doesn't approve it, we're back to square one. Okay, so by going with the three options, we can actually approve two, one for the new hires, another for the current city employees, with the idea that that would be up to their board, or their groups to approve it, or putting our current new employees under that same program with modifications. So just a modifications would be increase new employee contributions by 2% by next year, remove the lump sum payouts from inclusion in final average pay calculations for all employee groups. And remember, this is strictly for new employees, does not grandfather in anybody. And remove access to the city's health plan at retirement and no stipend for all employee groups. And then increase the normal retirement age at age 65 with 5 years of service, or age 60 with 30 years of service. So we would keep the current plan, but we would have modifications for new employees going into it.
Councilor Karski, if I understand what you're saying, or what you're suggesting is three resolutions, one dealing with current employees. So in essence, you're separating the discussion of current employees from future hires, so that you can have an individual discussion on each of the respective options. Is that fair?
We could go with one. We could go with two out of the three.
Questions for either Bill O'Toole or Councilor Karski? Councilor Staggers.
Yes. Bill, what we've been talking about today seems so abstract. We're talking about percentages of return and contributing 6% here, 8% here, 2% here, $40 per month per year of service, things like that. Can you give us some figures on how much retirees are actually receiving right now? In other words, starting with the lowest, giving us the average, and then giving us the highest that they're receiving.
All right, Councilor, are you asking if I have information that would tell me what the lowest benefit would be and the highest benefit
so
for
like, for
existing
example,
retirees?
is somebody receiving $20,000 a year, 50, 80, 100, so forth?
Some of the facts that I do have that I can share with you today, with respect, I'll start with the employees' retirement system. If you look at the employees' retirement system, there are currently 487 retirees and beneficiaries based on the 2011 actuarial valuation. And the benefits paid is about $12.4 million for those 487. That's an average of $25,451 for each. Now, that's a little misleading to just take an average.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that if I look at all of the general division career employees since 1993 that retired with 25 or more years of service, there's an average benefit there of $31,644, and that's based on 31 years of service and based on the average age of 59. So if that helps. And then I would move on and talk about it from the police division. Again, from 1993 to 2011, those with 25 or more years of service, average benefit of $44,373. That's based on 28 years of service and an average age of 52. In the firefighters fund, again, there's 156 retirees and beneficiaries, and in 2011, the amount of benefits paid was $5.7 million. That's an average of $36,907. But if we, again, look at actuals and looked at the 1993 through 2011, those that retired with more than 25 years of service, the average benefit there was about $46,000.
46,000 for what?
Annually.
Yes.
Once again, what? That's the firefighters pension fund. Those are the only stats that I'd have with me. I don't have the high or the low, but I do have those career numbers.
Mm-hmm. And also, when we talk about how much they're receiving, do we have a percentage like they'll receive maybe 50% of their salary, or do we have those kind of formulas?
No, the formula is, I mean, a defined benefit pension plan, the value of the benefit is determined by the formula. And in the general division, it's final average pay times years of service times 1.8%. And in the public safety side, it's final average pay times years of service times 2.5% for the first 25 years and 1.5% for years in excess of 25.
Yeah, but still we can figure out what percent that would be of their salary.
Of their, yes.
Yes.
If I go back and again, looking at that same statistical averages that I was talking to you earlier, in the general division, it's a replacement about 66% of base pay. And in the police division, it's 82% of base pay. And in the firefighters, it's 82% of base pay as well. And again, there are those different formulas between those two divisions are by design because public safety does not participate in Social Security.
I guess I would wonder, I mean, 66% and 82% and so forth, that's pretty high percent, especially when you compare it to the private sector. But how does this compare with other city governments?
Our last study, that comprehensive compensation and benefits study that we did was in 2009. It was conducted by the Siegel Company. And they looked at our pension plan as well as our direct compensation. And in relation to our peers, we were very competitive with our peers.
So we're right up at the top.
I would say we were right at that median, maybe slightly above the median.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. O'Toole? Councilor Aguilar?
I have one for Tracy Turbeck, please. Director Turbeck, in your comments, you said, and I hope I have this right, slowly, very slowly, the risk shifts to the state if we go with a state pension system. Could you expand on that? Give us some idea what you meant by it?
Under the state retirement system, the contribution rates are equal between the employee and the employer. The state legislature have the ability to make changes to benefits. So if there is something that happens in the future, if investment returns in the state plan for a prolonged period of time do not meet their assumed returns, the state may be faced with a situation where they have to reduce benefits. And so that risk is that investment loss risk is translated into a change in benefits then that is shared by the employees. Where here the employees have a vote in terms of the changes to the reductions to their benefits.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson.
A question or two for Bill. First, thanks for all your patience on this topic. We've drug it out probably as long as we can. Just a little history, if I could. Where did this all start, this review of the pension plan and the benefits? How did this get started 2 years ago? And who did that?
Well, it started with a discussion with the mayor. He had tasked the pension boards with the goal of looking at and determining ways to reduce and stabilize those rising rates. And as Tracy said, if you look at those historical contribution rates, that they are rising at unsustainable levels. And so there was a need to address those costs.
Okay, well, I'd just first off like to publicly address the mayor that I think it was a job well done, that it was an important issue for us to look at. And I'm glad we're doing it, and thank him for taking the initiative. The other thing is you said you had some of the members of the boards of trustees here.
Yes.
Could they stand, just so we can kind of tell who those people are?
And
okay,
what you
thank
have is a mixture of employee, trustee representatives, and outside representatives as well. I'd be happy to introduce them if you'd like me to.
Sure,
Please,
why don't you
do.
just...
Over here is Peggy Dant from the Employees Retirement System, Matt Burns from the Police Division, Shauna Goldhammer, Employee Representative, Matt McAravey from Firefighters, Randy Farland from the Firefighters, and Angeline Lavin from the Firefighters. Angeline has served us well, and she was a spokesperson for the fiscal committee when they met with the pension boards as well.
Good,
Okay,
thank
very
you.
good. The goal of reducing and stabilizing the contribution rates, you know, when the these boards were challenged with that goal, and they spent 2 years assessing that and getting to these recommendations. I mean, here's where it gets maybe a little sensitive, Bill, is Do you feel that these trustees would do this in such a way that they would preserve their positions? I mean, in all essence, we've put a lot of faith in these groups and these boards to do what they think is best for these funds, and give us these recommendations that they've spent 2 years analyzing, and we've spent plenty of money with consultants trying to figure it all out. How do we not take that advice and run with it? Because I get the idea of moving over to the state system. Pretty simple, pretty clean cut. But geez, when we've got those two boards working on this for 2 years, you almost feel obligated that the work they've done is good and that the effort they put forward is worth reviewing and is worth accepting. How can we, as part-time counselors, go against that? Help me.
Well, I would guess I would answer it this way, Counselor, that yes, the pension boards did spend a considerable amount of time on a very complex subject and did a fantastic job. They evaluated lots of scenarios and different options regarding current and future employees. And when you talk about perhaps two of those different prevailing thoughts, the board looked at both of those, and both of those accomplish the objectives of the plan. And I think what happens is you look at some things differently and philosophically think, well, there might still be another way to look at skinning the cat, so to speak. Doesn't make one right, doesn't make one wrong. They both could be right. And as I laid out in the presentation, both options serve to accomplish the goal that was there.
Right, I think we've talked about that as well, that if I could, that both options are doing what we need them to do, and moving, changing, doing something is very important here, and we're doing that in one way or another. But I really like the process that we went through to get here, and I find it hard to discount it. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rolfing.
Yes, thank you. You can stay there, because I think you can answer one question, but I will not take exception, but I will add something to what Tracy said, and that is that if something would happen and we'd have a prolonged years of downturn in the investment market, if we were in the state retirement system, they would have two choices, the legislature. One of them would be to remove or to lower the benefits, but the other one, which could happen too, would be to increase the contribution to it and retain and leave the benefits where they are, which I would hope they would consider very highly, with the people that are in the retirement system already receiving benefits, so that they would not disenfranchise those people. And I would hope that that's what the state legislatures would consider very highly. Probably more than we would be able to. They'd be in a better financial situation than we would be able to do that if we were caught in that situation, which is what we're trying not to be caught in. Correct? Thank you. The other thing I'd like to ask, in our full or our employees, or kind of our comparison of the South Dakota retirement system and the city plan, pension plan, I see that the South Dakota retirement system has a 3-year vesting plan in each one of them. How are we getting away with a 15-year and a 5-year vesting plan with the laws the way they are, the federal laws the way they are?
Well, I think each jurisdiction can establish their own vesting requirements. And I think you're after a couple of different things when you talk about that. I know that, I believe, I'm not sure of the dates, but the vesting period, I think, was reduced on the general side. And on the public safety side, you're usually talking about career employees with law enforcement and public safety, that those vesting periods, while they do seem long, actually, I believe that they work very well with public safety. And I think it's not uncommon to see those longer vesting periods in the public safety side.
I understand that, but the law of the nation says 3 years now, unless I'm doing something, finding something wrong with, like typically happens with Congress, regulations for the general public are different than for public employees, and that must be what this amounts to.
They may be, Counselor, I don't believe our pension system is out of compliance
Okay, I'm sure it isn't, and so that would be one of the things that
I would defer that to legal counsel.
is a nice, and that would be a super, that is a benefit, let me tell you, that, that the city plan right now for the individuals is a huge benefit. So, just a word. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Ralph. And Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, I'll start with Bill here. Bill, right now, how many employees do we have that have over 20 years of experience or service with the city?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure that number. I don't know if we have any of those statistical numbers with us today.
Or any
take a
type of projections on retirements over the next maybe 10 years?
We do that analysis, and what we do is every year we'll notify each department of all the members of their department who are eligible for retirement to help them with their succession planning efforts. Again, I don't know that I have that information right with me here today.
Basically, I read a lot of insight online, the employees page, and seeing the employees' number of years of service, and that question came up. If I could continue, please. With that, with the, oh, okay.
We do have them, excuse me.
Thank you.
So these are
Yep. This
average.
is who's eligible.
Okay, so through 2012, we have 99 individuals that would be eligible to retire. Through 2013, there'd be, is that 33 more, Angie? Is that what that's saying? And then through 2014, another 31. So that's 30, 64, about 163 employees that are eligible to retire through 2014.
Okay. And with the options that we have been given, and I'll agree with everyone else, I think there are good options, but I think that the base of this is all deciding whether or not the city wants to try to start eliminating the pension plan and going into a different form of retirement. No? Because I see when we go into the state, we're going to lose the control that we have now with the pension program.
Well, going to the state retirement system is one of the options for the future employees. And yes, we've laid out those side-by-side comparisons about what that would mean.
But I guess what I was going with is that I believe one of the comments was that if we go into the state retirement, or the future employees, excuse me, go into the state retirement plan, then it'll be a slow start, but a continuation into eliminating our city pension plan as the current employees retire.
That's correct, Counselor.
Okay, sorry that I misworded that. One other question with the rate of return. If the rate of return is above the assessed rate, what happens with those funds above? Do they stay in the retirement and they're used for the other years?
Yes, if we achieve a rate of return that exceeds the assumption, that works favorably for the overall rate for the City of Sioux Falls. So just as it goes up when we don't achieve it, it does go down when we exceed it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Just a couple of questions from the chair, and then we're going to go around again, because I know there are other questions floating out there. I'm looking at, I guess I have a question first for Councilor Karski. I'm looking at that packet of 3 items that you left for us, and I'm comparing the last one that is the resolution providing recommendations for current employees, and then I'm comparing it. I did spend significant time with our fun little book. Thank you, Bill. It was very helpful. If you look at the resolutions in that book, the last one is the new tier structure. Let me make sure I'm doing this right. The new tier structure. If you look at item 2 on the back page of that last resolution proposal in that booklet, there is no item 2 for the current employees in the proposed 3rd resolution that you have, Councilor Karski. Is that correct?
That's correct, because this would strictly be for the new employees, and it would still be up to, again, we could have, by doing it this way, we can take 2 of the 3.
Right, I understand.
And by doing it this way, if we vote for this one, for this resolution to go forward, it wouldn't require any action by the employee group for this revision.
Okay. Okay, then, okay. Then a question for Bill. One of the items in that, again, in Councilor Karski's packet, and I believe it's also in the resolution for the new employees. Yeah, it is. It's in that same one. I was looking at that last resolution in the book. There's a bullet points under item 2, again, in both Councilor Karski's version and in the last version in the book. The second bullet point under item 2 says remove lump sum payouts from inclusion in final average pay calculations for all employee groups. Can you put that into real English for me? What does that mean?
When you look at the definition of final average pay, when you go to determine the value of the lifetime benefit, there are things like vacation payout, sick leave payout at the end of somebody's career that it gets included in the calculation of final average pay. That would be the term that a lot of people have heard in relation to that discussion is the spiking concept. And that's what that's getting at, is removing, excuse me, the ability to include those payouts into the calculation of final average pay for purposes of determining then the future value and lifetime payments through that benefit.
Okay, thank you. All right, going for round 2, Council Karski.
I just wanted to clarify that today I called Mr. O'Toole and talked to him about just having 2 options and discussed the benefit of taking 3 options. And after a lengthy conversation, we decided that might be a good option to do or a good path to take. And I had our legislation and operations person, Jim David, our manager there, contact Mr. O'Toole and work on these 3 resolutions. So I wasn't the one who put them together. It was based on a lengthy conversation and giving us more options to consider. So that's why it's in front of you.
Well, just, if I might just respond to that, I think it's great, and I appreciate you taking the initiative to give us yet another option. We just got to kind of flesh it out. Other questions from councilors? Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, just a quick question, Bill, and that's in regard to the police and fire not being in Social Security. Why is that the case?
I don't remember what year it was. It was a long time ago. A decision was made to opt out of the Social Security at that time. And that's all how I can answer it is that decision was made many, many years ago, and that's what's in place today. And again, when the pension plan was then formulated, that's why you see a higher formula multiplier, if you will, is for that reason.
Also, how long have we had this basic pension plan for the city employees? For 10, 15, 20, or how many years?
About 1957.
1957. Okay, thank you.
Clarify, 57 or 87?
57, 1957.
Okay. Other questions? I didn't hear it right. Other questions? Okay, this will be on our agenda July 10th. If there are other questions of directors or staff people or whatever, I'd say throw it out there. Any other questions for pension discussion? Bill and Tracy and all those folks involved with this, thank you so much for the amount of work you've put into it. You know that we aren't dragging our feet on purpose. We are studying this heavily, and this is an important topic for our city. Thank you very much. Moving on in presentations, we'll go to the 2013-2017 Capital Program Overview by Mike Huther, Mayor, Tracy Turbeck, Director of Finance.
Well, Councilor Chair Urbanbach, thank you so much for this opportunity. City Councilors, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. I want to start by saying this is an exciting time for our city. Just announced today a 3.8% unemployment rate. We've created over 4,700 jobs in the last 2 years. We're proud of our roads again and the progress in strengthening our city's infrastructure. Construction permits are pumping, record numbers at the Sioux Falls Airport. And yes, last week announcement that there are more local Sioux Falls jobs coming because of the new events center. These are Sioux Falls companies. These are Sioux Falls jobs. This is Sioux Falls economic development. And yes, Sioux Falls is winning. Our confidence level is second to none right now. And with that in mind, let's talk about our city's recommended capital plans for the next 5 years. This city council and the leaders before you, you deserve a ton of credit for helping to make the good things happen for our city. Prioritizing how to spend valuable taxpayer dollars is incredibly tough, but the effort is so worth it, as evidenced by our investments in repairing, rebuilding, and replacing our city's infrastructure, the Fun River Greenway project, the Events Center, and so much more. But, council and people of Sioux Falls, there's much more that we can ultimately accomplish. And the program that I'm going to relay to you does that. We're proposing to invest over $386 million in capital over the next 5 years, and next year, a little over $80 million to get us started in 2013. Where does this money come from? Well, the bulk of it comes from that second penny sales tax. Over $195 million is projected. We are very, very bullish when it comes to the revenue streams for our city. Last year, when I came forth and met with most of you, we had projected an assumed growth of 3% 1 year, 4%, then 4%, then another 5%, then a number 5. We're more bullish than that now. Right now, we are projecting 5% year-over-year revenue increases over the next 5 years through 2017. Sioux Falls taxpayers will reap the rewards, and this will allow us to invest in critical projects for the people of our town. How are we projecting to use it? Well, we want to spend that $386 million in funding over the next 5 years, and it will be spent in the following areas. Almost $154 million in highways and streets, $127 million in utilities, almost $46 million in parks and libraries, another $42 million in equipment, and yes, $18 million to keep our citizens safe. I want to break this down for you even more in the slides to come. I'll tell you, I'm incredibly excited about this, and I'm pretty dang confident that the people of Sioux Falls will be as well. Here's what we plan to do. We want to keep Sioux Falls moving and growing. We want to get our city caught up and capture a few of the long-standing needs of our city and our citizens. And yes, we want to stay one step ahead of the growth that is certainly coming our way. Guess what? Sioux Falls is being noticed in a very, very big way. Companies want to move here. People are moving here. And ultimately, we must be ready. With the recommendations before you, indeed, we will keep Sioux Falls moving forward. First of all, we need to keep up with growth. What does this mean? Well, we do need to invest in arterial street expansion. Some of the roads that we're talking about are Western Avenue, Benson Road, Russell Street, and yes, Councilor Karski, 41st Street. We need to expand to the west, and 41st Street will be funded with this plan. At the same time, Councilor Jameson, you are spot on. You are absolutely right. Our intersections are getting busier, and we will tackle this and more with this plan. Whether it be Arrowhead Parkway and the Sycamore Avenue intersection, 57th Street and Western Avenue that I know Councilor Jameson is concerned with, and he should be. 41st Street and Western Avenue, just another example of intersections that are getting busier and busier, and it's time to improve and expand their capacity. And guess what, Sioux Falls? We've got new schools being built, whether it be the Sioux Falls Public Schools on the northwest side of our town that Councilor Karski is incredibly excited about, But also, we've got Harrisburg School District that's also expanding within the confines of our town. And we need to be ready for that, and this plan will ensure that we are ready for that and more. Today's headline read, "Too much construction in our city." I found it hilarious, and I loved it. I loved it. 2 years ago, our citizens were complaining about the terrible condition of our roadways. They had every right to. We're not going to allow this situation to happen again. You won't allow it as a city council, and this mayor isn't going to allow it either. Kiwanis Avenue, 57th Street, the interior neighborhood roads that we had a citizen complain about last week to this city council. And yes, our downtown will continue to see orange barrels. And those neighbors will be incredibly thankful for it. Road construction in our town should be celebrated, not criticized, should be celebrated. Go to Omaha, go to Lincoln, go to Sioux City, go to Minneapolis, and I'll tell you folks, they would dream about the investments that this council, that this city is putting into their roadways. Celebrate these orange barrels. Don't criticize them. Even though that I believe we have the best outdoor parks in the country, continued investments in them are key. Play courts all over the city have been improved and updated, but more work lies ahead. I know that this city council is a huge proponent, huge supporter of public and private partnerships. You know this, so am I. This CIP plan has all of the elements to finally address some needs that this city has had for years. Indoor swimming venues, indoor skating and hockey venues, and yes, indoor tennis venues. These are quality of life investments. These are public health investments, and these are economic development investments for our city that are long, long overdue. The city of Sioux Falls is ready. The citizens of this town are ready. And this plan, if approved, will make sure that Sioux Falls city government is also ready for the partnerships that are before us. The number one factor to a great quality of life is whether your family feels safe and indeed secure. This CIP plan also addresses that need. The Northwest is growing at an incredible rate. There are rooftops sprouting up all over out there, folks. A new fire station will help provide safety and security for the residents there. Later on, a new fire station will also be built on the southeast part of town. That's also growing at a solid pace. We want to make sure that we protect all of the people of this town. And we'll be making investments or recommending that we make investments to do just that. For the people of Sioux Falls that are watching at home, I do want to point out where we are recommending that these new fire stations go. One will go on Maple Street and Marion Road, and the other will go at 41st Street and 6 Mile Road. We just celebrated the ribbon cutting of Phase 1 of the River Greenway. Soon, we're going to celebrate the groundbreaking of Phase 2 of the River Greenway. This plan ensures that we celebrate the next phase even beyond that for our soon-to-be famous Riverwalk of Sioux Falls. We also know that our families and our kids and our town loves green space. We're Midwesterners. Being outside is a way of life for us. New parks are planned for the South Central, Southwest, and East Central parts of our town with this plan as well. They're projected to be called Prairie Meadows, Galway, and Dolly. And it's a $1.5 million investment that this plan addresses as well. You knew I couldn't leave today's discussion without talking a little bit about our new event center. As you know, we did our best to educate and inform the citizens of this town about the proposed event center. Now that it is overwhelmingly passed the vote of the people of this town, we want to make sure that we follow through with what we discussed at the time we were educating and informing the people of our town before they voted. We plan to stay true to our word. We don't need no new taxes to pay for the event center. We don't need property taxes to pay for the event center, and we don't need any tax increases to pay for the event center. We are still planning on reserving the private funds for operating support. The capital plan that we talked about last year remains intact, and in fact, we're actually going to invest more in some of the other critical infrastructure needs of our town, even more than what we had thought way back when, a year ago. We can tackle the capital expenses of our new event center while still meeting the other infrastructure needs of our city. In fact, because of solid revenue growth, we will actually be able to invest more than we originally discussed last year. More for our streets, more for our parks, more for public safety, and yes, more for a quality of life that we want to enjoy. And we can do that by borrowing funds to meet the critical infrastructure needs of our town and doing it in a prudent and responsible fashion. The citizens of Sioux Falls, they're a pretty confident bunch right now, but they have unbelievably high expectations. They demand that as a council and as a mayor, we balance progress with prudence. This plan does that. They will demand that we meet the basic infrastructure needs of our city. This plan does that. They will demand that we keep up with the increasing needs and wants of our people. This plan does that. And last but not least, they want us to continue to get stuff done. Sioux Falls, this plan does that and more. I want to thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak with you today. My team and I, we look forward to any and all questions that you have on this critical plan for our town. And again, we commend you for your efforts as you look at this plan and perform the due diligence that I know you'll do incredibly well. With that, I thank you for your time. Does anybody have any questions now? I'd be happy to take them, or Tracy, or we can certainly delay those for the months and discussions that lie ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Huther. Obviously, we do have hearings set for this, and we will be in depth with this, and we all appreciate the binders that have been added to our piles of information. But we do have some brief questions now.
Please.
And so we'll start with Councilor Staggers.
Mr. Mayor, you talked about briefly about the $115 million event center.
Yes.
On the slide, which talks about capital program uses being $386.1 million, am I to assume that that's not part of the $386.1 million, the event center?
Oh, absolutely, it's part of it.
Okay, where's it at? Where it's divvied? Well, I guess you don't have everything divvied up on that slide, maybe, or
No, you'll find all the breakout, of course, in the package that we've relayed to you, Tracy, would you try to give him some?
Sure, I can try to address that. Because the event center was, excuse me, added into the budget for this current year, the 386 really includes just future additional projects that will take place starting in 2013.
So the 115 million is not?
That's correct.
Okay.
But the bonding.
The plan does allow for the payments on the event center bonds.
So that would be,
The 386 does not include debt service costs. Those costs are outside the capital plan.
okay. Also, just another quick question. Did you say anything about the extension of 49th Street in the near future? Are we going to be doing that in the next few years?
I'm sorry? It is in the plan, Janelle? Thank you. Okay. Janelle is saying that that is it is in the plan, and her recollection is it's 2017.
2017, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Janelle.
Other questions based on this introduction? Counselor Jameson.
If I could, thank you for being here.
You bet. Great. Appreciate it.
Just briefly going through the binder that was delivered to us, is there any other new borrowing proposed in your plan? Other than what was approved by the event center?
The only projects that are in here that are that are planned to be new projects that involve borrowing would be a placeholder for a parking ramp, and that's something that's been in the plan for a number of years, and it's just it's been out there, just as I say, a placeholder. There are dollars set aside, and you'll see in the one of the first pages in the plan, there are dollars set aside in anticipation of borrowing for an aquatic center. If the path for a year-round facility is chosen, we have made allowances in the second penny sales tax dollars to accommodate payments on that debt service, should that ultimately be the option that's selected.
Is that what I read as Quality of Life Bond 3?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions based on this introduction? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You bet.
Very exciting
Thank
news.
you, City Council. You bet. Make it a great day.
Then I just remind the public that, as always, the mayor's recommended capital plan is on siouxfalls.org, so that you can be just as nerdy as we are and go line by line through that thing and ask questions and contact your council members. We all have our email address and phone numbers on siouxfalls.org. Moving on in this meeting, we are headed for Tier 1 wastewater compliance update with Mark Cotter, Public Works Director, Trent Lubers, Utility Operations Administrator, and Bob Kappel, Environmental Manager. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Council Chair and Council members. I'm Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. Many of you will remember where we were at on August 4th of 2010, the day that came to culmination after we were receiving record levels of rain, and our wastewater collection system had been running at peak capacity for weeks at that point in time. It was a day that we did see a major failure in the wastewater collection system. It was the collapse of a long, very difficult access line. But that was really, after we recognized that failure, there was a number of successes that have come after that event that I think that the City of Sioux Falls can be proud of, and truly is leading the country in how we're addressing our wastewater collection systems moving forward. This day we activated the EOC, which allows us to leverage multiple departments, multiple government agencies to start a very well-organized communication plan, but also initiate all the activities that we needed to do to recover the situation. A bypass system was installed in less than 24 hours, which is essentially a remarkable effort when you're talking about moving up to 18 million gallons of wastewater a day, and we don't have those specialty contractors in our city. So they not only mobilize, but they set up a full system. And you'll see, again, a picture of that many of you are very familiar with. Specialty contractor was mobilized, ultimately made the repair so we could restore the system and remove the bypass lines that traversed a large area of that northern end of the city. We then did initiate a large-scale assessment of the major trunk lines of the city and ultimately prioritized projects, lined up low-interest loan funding so we could initiate those projects. You ultimately provided the funding authority for those projects so we could be in a place today that we can report to you where those projects are at. As a part of this, we did sign a compliance order with the DNR that committed us to completing the highest priority projects by this point in time. So today, Trent Lubers will lead a discussion on the report card of where those projects are at. Trent?
Good afternoon. Trent Lubers, Office of Public Works. I like the way Mark put it. This is our report card. We have an agreement with the DENR. Ultimately, they're our regulator, and we told them by the end of June of 2012 we'd have these projects done. And so I'm here to report to you today that the list of 8 major projects that we reported to the DENR that we would have done, we have completed. So I won't get really techie or go through. There's some of that information in here, but I just want to give you a takeaway from each one of these projects and why they were important. This is a list of the projects that we submitted to the DENR, and the only takeaway from this slide is our opinion of probable cost when we originally submitted this list was $27 million, $27.3 million to get this work done in that 18-month period of time. We actually ended up completing the projects on time for $19.7 million. That's we enjoyed an outstanding bidding climate. Contractors were there for us, and we needed to get this work done in a short period of time. We really had a great window to get the work done. Mark alluded to the first project in our compliance order, and that was the Walnut and Main trunk sewer. Clearly, this sewer was very important to us as far as how much of the city it served. 17,800 properties, or nearly 17,800 properties, were served by this sewer. Mark talked about the level of effort involved. This is really a measure of what we are as a city and how we get things done. In 24 hours, Mark said that, 24 hours, we had a bypass system in place. That's unheard of. That's absolutely unheard of as far as the amount of infrastructure that needed to be put in place, temporary infrastructure, overground. You were out there. You saw what we did. You saw the work that was done. All departments in the city provided effort, from the fire department to every division of public works. They were all there providing assistance throughout this process. The other takeaway from this project is from the day of the collapse until we were done and had the pipe in place, it was 42 days. 42 days from a normal project where we would bid and execute a contract and award and get a contractor mobilized. 42 days to have a contractor on site to start a project would be a pretty significant effort. And we had the project done in 42 days. Remarkable effort. Just a little overview of this project. We committed to do this project. It was a $1.27 million project. Some of that cost was associated with the short time frame, obviously. We did recover some of these funds. We submitted these types of damages to FEMA, and we did receive a FEMA reimbursement to recover some of this cost. But again, this $1.27 million, we committed to do this because it needed to be done. This is one of the important things for the Water Reclamation Division and the other divisions of Public Works as far as why we keep reserves. This is our emergency fund. When something like this happens, we can mobilize quickly, we can get the infrastructure in place, and we can commit to doing it because we have that reserve fund available. As a parallel to this project, the type of failure that we had at the Walnut and Main collapse, we essentially saw a corrosion of the concrete pipe that we had there. So on a parallel path, we wanted to not only inspect and see what was happening in our system, but we also wanted to monitor the extraneous flow, the extra water coming in. So one of the projects that we had in our Tier 1 compliance list was for us to actually go out and get real-time information from those areas of the city where we were seeing high levels of extraneous or extra water coming in. So again, in a very short period of time, we installed 20 flow meters in our system. We concentrated down on the lower half of the city, down in the southern area of the city, around Todd Hill Lift Station, because as you all recall, that's where we were seeing the massive flows coming into our system. This gave us great information. And again, the project itself was in the neighborhood of $316,000. But from August 4th to October 27th, we were gathering flow data. Also in that period of time, we had 3 televising vans out in the system, and we were looking at every inch of pipe that we had. So we were working with a consultant and working with our own teams to do a massive assessment effort. And that is where a lot of these projects came from. Sanitary sewer pipelining program. This is one of our ongoing projects, and we've funded an annual project to do pipelining, but we haven't done it on this scale until we had the August 4th incident. This is a pipeliner, and what it is it's a felt liner that we actually pull inside an existing pipe. It's a trenchless technology, and that liner is impregnated with a chemical called resin, and they cook it out with either steam or hot water, and that creates a hard pipe inside that pipe. So we essentially have a brand new pipe inside the existing pipe that allows us to keep extraneous water out, to keep any types of structural failures that may happen. We actually cook that into the diameter of the existing pipe. This is a great technology for us in built-out areas where there may be communications lines or existing infrastructure that we don't want to disturb, or the street condition is really good. And it's a built-out area where we're not going to see extra capacity coming into the system. So this is a really great technology for us. In our assessment program, we did 4 miles of this type of work. And it could be anywhere from our normal 8-inch main size all the way up to 36 inches in diameter. This technology can be used in pipe sizes up to 72 inches in diameter. So it's a great technology for us to use to keep the disruption to traffic, to our citizens, to keep that to a minimum. The project was a $642,000 project as part of the assessment, and we certainly completed that on time. Manhole lining. Manholes are also, they're a concrete structure, and they have the ability to degrade and collapse or let water in. And so we do an annual inspection, or we do a 3-year inspection of all the manholes in the city. We go through and do a maintenance program in the city every 3 years, and with that, every manhole gets looked at, and we do a manhole inspection. So we went through those reports, and we prioritized which manholes needed to be done, which ones were structurally poor, which ones had leaking systems. And essentially, to do a manhole repair, there are any number of things that you can do, from injecting a chemical grout to a total replacement. And we did 34 manholes as part of our compliance project. Next project. This one's a very interesting project for us, and it involved a lot of effort from our from staff. It was a lot of design effort. There was a lot of coordination and design enhancements that came from our interaction with the neighborhood. But essentially what you have is a drainage channel, or a low area that was built out residentially, and it had overgrown. This channel was there to convey stormwater, and there was also a 10-inch sanitary sewer line. If you think about us wanting to use gravity sewer, we try to put those sewer lines in low areas and follow the terrain so that we don't have the expense of running pump stations. What had happened with this drainage channel is it had become overgrown with trees. There was root intrusion into the old clay 10-inch sanitary sewer pipe that was there. And because of the rains and the erosion at the side of the bank, we were starting to expose that sanitary sewer line throughout the process. We had many meetings with the neighbors. The neighbors had certainly had some concerns about what the aesthetic of the improvements were going to look like. There were a lot of trees. It was a wooded area. What would it look like when we were done? And so there was a lot of interaction there. They were certainly involved in the design process. And I think we ended up with a very nice amenity for the neighborhood and a significant improvement. What you see on the left is what it looked like before. I don't have the picture of the exposed drainage pipe. I know that we've showed you that before in previous meetings, but that's what the channel looked like. It was overgrown. There were a lot of undesirable trees in there. Those roots actually get into the sanitary sewer line. There was bank erosion. And on the right are the improvements that were made. And I know that we've had some feedback from the neighborhood, and the comments have been that it's been a very nice amenity and it's been a very great improvement. Just one other thing to share is we'll also be sharing this improvement through a press meet on Thursday. There'll be some more information to come as far as the timing of that, but we really want to get the public out there, and we want them to see the effort that was made here and the level of work and improvement that happened. This was a $1 million project that was combined storm and sanitary work. Central Maine, we've talked about that a lot. We all know the impacts that happened on the bike trail last year. The central main was a significant project for us, and it was one that we put as a high priority for us because we had a capacity issue with the Tut Hill lift station. The Tut Hill lift station was able to pump and work throughout all those high flow events, but the pipe downstream from the Tut Hill lift station could not carry the flow. So what we did is we replaced nearly 3 miles of the central main. We've increased the capacity by double. Big pipes, 60-inch pipe, 5-foot in diameter pipe was put in the ground. And what we did by increasing that capacity is this bought us some time to make the improvements that we needed to upstream. If we had another high flow event or anything like that, we could convey the water through the central main without having the controlled releases that we did at the Tut Hill lift station. Other amenities or improvements that came from this project is 3 miles of bike trail because of the impacts of this pipe following the river were repaved. There were several improvements there. The success of this project and the patience that we got from the Parks Department for disrupting probably one of the crown jewels for the City of Sioux Falls, the bike trail system, and the public for being patient with us while we make these improvements along the bike trail is really a contributor to the success of this program and this project. The takeaway from this last slide is our original projected budget for this program or for this project was $21 million. We actually bid it out for over 13. There were $7 million worth of savings on this project, which allowed us to do more capital work in the system. The last project I want to talk about is another capacity-driven project. This is the filter building out at the water reclamation plant. This is the final building or the final process before the wastewater gets disinfected and discharged to the Big Sioux River. This is really our quality report card. This is what makes the water look crystal clear. It removes the solids. Interesting things about this project is we worked with SDSU and a graduate student to look at some conceptual filter designs and have them pilot those. The filter designs were something that a paper was written on in 1972, 1974, in that time frame. And so we reached out to SDSU to see if they'd like to model this and run a pilot filter test. They did it, and the results were encouraging. So what we did is we took that design and worked with a consultant to refine the design. And in our existing filter building, we've doubled the capacity. If you look at what water treatment did in the last 2 years, they added filtering capacity. They increased their capacity by 50% and spent over $8 million. So if you do the math, this was a $3.7 million project, and we doubled our capacity at the facility, and we did it for $3.1 million. It wasn't just the filter enhancements that happened, but we also enhanced the building as far as doing some roof repair, doing some structural repair on the building, putting energy-efficient lighting in, essentially just maintaining the building and doing things that we needed to do in the building in the first place. So we took out that pinch point or that final restriction in the plant. So when we see those high flows, and as those high flows need to come through the system, this won't be a pinch point. We won't have to bypass this process and bypass this last step of quality before it gets discharged to the Big Sioux River. Next project. That's the Tier 1 list. Tomorrow, we're taking the Chief Regulator, Kelly Busher is her name. She works with the DENR, and she's the one who works on regulatory compliance with us for the City of Sioux Falls. And we'll be taking her through all these projects and sharing this information with her. The feedback that we've gotten from the state is, wow, Sioux Falls has got their stuff together. We met with Secretary Perner and the Secretary of the DENR, and his comments were, wow, the effort that Sioux Falls has put into this repair. Instead of just repairing the failure, we've gone out and looked at what the failure causes were, and we've gone after that and fixed it. We're not going to wait for the next failure. We're going to be aggressive with our capital program, and we're going to continue to fix things. So we had a Tier 2 list of projects. And if you look at this, we've already, I think I went one slide too far, Tier 2 list of projects. We've completed the first 3 projects in our Tier 2 list. And we have several other projects that are in progress. And so we continue to work on improving our system and making the necessary investments to make sure that the types of failures that we saw happen in 2010, we're doing our best to prevent those from reoccurring in the future. Should we see those types of record rains or that type of long-term precipitation event in the future. And this doesn't just go out to 2017. We're looking beyond. We're looking between 2020 and 2025. These are numbers, we look out 10 years in the capital plan, and we look out 10 years in the rate model that you see. So a lot of these numbers and a lot of these projects are at least programmed in there, so you get a look and see how that has an impact on rates into the future and the cash balance for the fund. The last thing I want to add is that as a measure of a community and the level of effort that it takes from the support that we get from the elected officials and from the citizens through the rates that they pay and through the approval of the loans and get this type of capital work done, it's a monumental effort and it's appreciated, and I think it helps build that level of trust and that level of goodwill with our regulators to make sure that they know that we do everything that we can to ensure that these types of things don't happen and that we see this as big a failure as they do. We don't want to have sewage escape from our system and get to the Big Sioux River. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you'd have.
Thank you, Trent. Questions? Councilor Entman.
Trent, I know the importance of the flow meters because they really did help identify where the issues were at the time that we were having those issues in 2010. Are you still utilizing that equipment that we purchased at that time?
Yes, sir. Not only do we have the original 20 in place, but we purchased 17 more. Our staff, we have an engineering technician, Scott Knudsen. He's a flow technician, and he monitors that information, and he moves those flow meters around. Some of them are in permanent locations, but he moves those around. They're mobile, so we look at various areas in the system that we suspect. Essentially, if you look at Central Main as the trunk of the tree, or that trunk sewer that goes into the Tud Hill lift station is the trunk of the tree, and we break off into the branches and we start moving up to see where that infiltration is coming from, because that's where the next capital projects, that's where the next lining projects are going to come from, based on that information.
Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing.
I just want to say, you guys did your job. We charged you in August after that incident that almost became a tragedy to get this thing fixed. You came back, what, 3 months later, 2 months later, and said, here's what we need. And we said, fine, get her done, here's the money. And by golly, you did it. And so I want to just say thank you, and the people of Sioux Falls say thank you. And we got a ways to go, but hey, the job was done, and it's done right. And thank you very much, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Jameson.
Trent, you're a fast talker.
Sorry.
And I was having trouble keeping up with just one part of it. The budget was set for like 21 million that we.
I believe the original estimate for probable cost on Central Main was 22 million, or
22.
21 million. Yeah.
And then you said that there was quite a substantial savings. Did we just return that money, or what did we do with it? You said something, I thought.
We actually, the loan that was approved, there's a facility plan for lining projects and to do the Central Main project. And our SRF application, the State Revolving Fund loan application, had all those projects included in it. And what we did, since there was $7 million of money that was unspent, is we took a look at the facilities plan and the lining work that we could do. One of the things that was a Phase 2 project was the Western Interceptor lining. The Western Interceptor is the trunk sewer that feeds the line upstream of where we had the collapse. So we had a Phase 1, a Phase 2, and a Phase 3 lining project associated with that. So it allowed us to leverage that money that was already built into our rate model to start working on more projects.
Very good, and I'm not teasing you. I'm just.
No, I know.
I know you're full of energy, and you do a good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Trent, you mentioned all the progress that we've made here on the lines and so forth. Can you say with confidence that we're probably not going to have another catastrophic incident like we did in August of 2010?
I can say that we're assessing and evaluating the sewer aggressively, and we're doing everything we can to prevent something like that to happen. I'll also say that if we would chase after every gallon of infiltration that we have in the system that we own and the system that the city owns, every engineer will tell you that 50% of your infiltration comes from the city main to the house. And so that's something that is part of our program also, is we go out and we pick areas and we inspect for sump pumps. There may be leaky service lines where someone's in a saturated soil area and they have root intrusion or a broken service line, and that clear water intrusion is coming in from their service. So we're going after what we can fix, and we're looking at those areas and making sure that if there are any illegal hooked up sump pumps or anything like that, that we'll make people aware that that's not an accepted practice and it's against our code and ordinance.
Yeah, how long does it take for the city to go through all the sewer lines? Does it take 2 years or 4 years with the TV camera and everything?
We have, it's probably closer to 10. It's probably a 10-year inspection program. And we're not just inspecting the 800 miles of sanitary sewer system that we have, but we also have 450 miles of storm sewer system that gets inspected regularly too. So there's collectively well over 1,000 miles of pipe that needs to be inspected.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Trent, with the sanitary sewer pipelining program, what is the life cycle for one of those liners?
Well, essentially, the life cycle, it's new pipe, and it's no different than a piece of PVC. It's a resin-impregnated pipe, but it resists corrosion from the gases and the types of corrosive forces that can happen in a sanitary sewer where concrete doesn't if the liner fails. So you're looking at a 50-year-plus solution.
Thank you.
Other questions for Trent? Councilor Karski.
I'm just curious, and I apologize if you said this already, but when you insert that new liner inside of a pipe, obviously you're going to lose capacity within that pipe, correct?
You lose some capacity because there is some thickness loss, but typically that old pipe has a rough surface on the inside. And so part of the process that you look at when you do that design is, do you, from smoothing the interior surface of the pipe, do you increase the ability for the wastewater to flow? And so usually you make up that loss of capacity with the ability for the wastewater to flow more smoothly.
Good to know. Thank you.
Other questions for Trent? Wow, amazing stuff. Thank you so much for your presentation. Councilor Rolfing. Councilor Rolfing, I've been informed that it requires 10 minutes to make the switch. I do have a couple of things for you quickly, though. One is back to the CIP. I'm going to nag about it just a little bit. We do have a working session scheduled for July 11th. Our budget analyst, Dave Bixler, will be leading us through that working session on July 11th, so I invite you to be ready for that. That will be at 3 o'clock in the overflow room. And then, as I said, land use meeting will start in 10 minutes. We'll say straight up 6 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned.
Okay. Oh. I can stay awake here. Yeah. Well, public service.